Well, welcome everybody. I'm so excited because I got to tell you, this is my favorite topic. Absolutely favorite topic. My biggest passion in the world is partnering with digital curriculum. And so I'm so glad you're with us today. We are doing the second introduction to the Portrait of a Nevada Learner Pedagogy series. So I'm glad some of you, I've seen familiar faces. Thanks for coming back. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So my name is Kim Loomis. I used to work for the Clark County School District. I was the director for digital learning at that time for the last 10 years there. Former teacher, taught high school math for 10 years, curriculum coordinator, did high school reform, did all kinds of really fun stuff. But I would say my last decade with Clark County was as the director for online and blended learning. Absolutely loved it. This is my passion. So when I retired in 2019, I said, I'm going to carry this passion forward. And like I said, this topic, partnering with digital curriculum, is probably like, you're going to see so much enthusiasm just oozing out of me because I absolutely love it. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I did write a book. You don't have to feel like you have to go out and look at it or anything. It is about the CIA of blended learning and what you're going to hear a little bit about tonight. So that'll be really interesting that you'll be able to see that. So today's agenda, of course, we started with our welcome. A lot of you threw in some of the apps. There's some new ones there that I hadn't seen before. We're going to talk about the Portrait of the Nevada Learner, go into some digital learning language, talk about engaging students using digital content and how to partner with digital content. And if those of you like this introduction to partnering with digital content, you can extend your learning into the Canvas workshop, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later this evening. So over in chat, now I know some of you were with me before, but have you seen the Portrait of a Nevada Learner? So I've got some recentlys, I got some no's. So we got a variety of things coming up there. Good. We're going to spend some time tonight talking a little bit about the Portrait of a Nevada Learner. Pull down the one pager. Inside of our Canvas course, you're going to have access to be able to go to the website that talks more about it. So let's talk a little bit about that, and then we're going to do a breakout in just a moment on it. So the Portrait of a Nevada Learner actually started a year ago. It was last October in 2022. I was one of the 200 Nevadas that gathered together, and we talked about the future of learning, identifying some of the mindsets and skills that the students need. Just don't think that it was a year ago, because it actually started in October of 21 when we had Knowledge Works come in and work with our Department of Education and start thinking through what can this look like in the long run. So that gathering of 200 people was probably just a big opportunity to really get some big input at that time, because they had been doing small webinars and input it prior to that. So then in January of 23, what they did is they started finding youth and classroom teachers to start piloting and thinking about what does that portrait look like and how does it act out in the classrooms. So it was really interesting to see those conversations and see teachers talk about how the Portrait of the Nevada Learner comes into their classroom and what does it look like. So hopefully you've clicked on the link, and I'll go ahead and I'll throw it back up into chat again. This is the one pager that you will see that they've created, and it was actually finalized on May of this year. So it really kind of thinks about four different things. They're thinking about, as a student, and I don't care if you're in kindergarten, first grade, or third grade, or seventh grade, or even a junior or senior in high school, you want to think about how is it that I will grow in my learning? How do I build and sustain relationships? How do I contribute and make an impact? And how do I thrive? And those are the four areas that you'll see in that learner, is those four questions. So on that one pager, you're seeing empowering. Empowering was that first question. How will I grow in my learning? And you can see some breakout there, some small bullets that talk about reflection and growth and self-awareness and advocacy and how to balance intellectual growth with emotional well-being. And then connecting, impacting, and thriving. Tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to spend a lot of time really looking at empowering, because one of the things I think digital curriculum does is it allows us to release learning to our students so that we can take ourselves off the stage and empower our students. And so let's take a little bit of time and look at that empowering. So when we look at the empowering strand, now, this is the strand that says, how will I grow in my learning? So when I'm thinking about learning as a student, as a third grader, as a seventh grader, as a sixth grader, whatever, how are they reflecting on their learning? What are their personal strengths? And if you were with us last time, you did the learner profile. So hopefully they've already done some of that reflecting. If you haven't, that webinar is already up on the Nevada State YouTube. You can go check that out. Or thinking about approaches in life with curiosity, saying, that's funny. I see a pattern here. Patterns, curiosity, right? And then here's the big part that I absolutely love when it comes to digital curriculum is helping them be self-aware, how they can monitor their needs, how they can advocate for themselves, and how they can ask for support because they know that they need it either in intellectual growth or for SEL skills in emotional well-being. So when you think about your classroom, and I've got a lot of words here highlighted, right? Reflect, personal strengths, approaches in life with curiosity, monitoring their own needs, advocacy, asking for support, intellectual growth, emotional well-being. What does that look like in your classroom? So here we are. We're going to go ahead and do a breakout room. So when you think about empowering, when you think about that strand, and again, we're only looking at that one strand inside of the profile of a Nevada learner. What are you currently doing in your classrooms? What strategies come to mind when you think of empowering? When you think about all those things that are going on? Welcome back. Welcome back. Hey guys, I hope you guys had some great conversations in your rooms about the classroom strategies that come to mind when we're looking at empowering our students. Anybody want to share something up in chat that came up that they thought was a great strategy that they either use in their classroom? Choice, goal setting, love it. Yeah, both of those are awesome. Thank you for sharing those. Oh, daily affirmations. Love it, Kim. Reflecting on their learning, all of those really cool things. Flipped classrooms, daily meetings. Love it, guys. Awesome. Advocating is so, so important. All right, guys. Well, thank you again for sharing all of those wonderful ideas. Keep them coming. We've got lots of room in the chat, so just throw them out there. I like that inquiry based. Let's talk a little bit about digital learning because we're going to talk about partnering with digital curriculum in just a moment. And I might come across or say some words that you may not be familiar with. But let's start with two words that I think you might know, especially since we just finished remote learning. Everybody's probably got a pretty good idea about synchronous, meaning that we're all together at the same time. This webinar is a synchronous session, right? We're all here, we're all learning at the same time, but once it's recorded and put up on Nevada State Department of Education's YouTube site, somebody else can view it and they can learn asynchronously, meaning that they weren't here with us at that time, but they could do it at a different time. Our Canvas course is a prime example of asynchronous learning. You're going to find lots of resources and examples of how to partner with digital learning or digital curriculum inside of our Canvas course, but you may be there at a different time than somebody else. Maybe you're a night owl, you like to do things at night, or maybe you're a weekend person who likes to do things on the weekends. That's an asynchronous component of learning. So when we think about digital learning, those two words tend to pop up. But what also tends to pop up is digital learning can look totally different all over the place. So when we think about digital learning, it can happen in a variety of places. It happened in remote learning 2 years ago when we were doing remote classrooms, right? That was one way of doing digital learning, but there's other ways that we could do digital learning as well. So I think of it as almost like a spectrum here of blended, which would be like 5 days a week in a classroom using digital content and tools in their pedagogy. Now, I could be 5 days in the classroom and never use digital content or tools and not be in a blended classroom. But what makes it a blended classroom is that 5 days with digital content and tools. Now, a hybrid digital learning environment. I've got a good friend of mine who's in Arizona. He runs a hybrid school. His middle school kids come in the morning. His high school kids come in the afternoon. I have another one who is in Colorado. He has a hybrid program where some kids have Tuesday, Thursdays they come in, and some kids have Monday, Wednesdays they come in. So it's not 5 days a week. It's a shortened schedule per se, not all 7 hours and 11 minutes. It could be, like I said, the middle was in the morning or in the afternoon. So it's a shortened schedule where they leverage digital content, where students are using digital curriculum to learn away from a building. Of course, in the online world, much like we have Nevada Virtual and NVLA here in Clark County School District, it is where all the learning is in a Canvas course or in another learning management system where the students are accessing asynchronously their content. They can log on when they want and when they don't want. Now, some online programs have required or optional synchronous components. So those are a little bit different. So up in chat, I got a quick question for you. Which program do you fall in? Would you be in a blended, a hybrid, an online, a remote, or maybe even a traditional, meaning that you're not using digital content and tools? So go ahead up in chat, throw out what you're at. Online, NBLA, love it. Got some blended, hybrid even. Look at all these different varieties, right? And all of these varieties have a different way. So when we say digital learning, sometimes people think digital learning is only for online or digital learning is only for remote. No, it's in all of these areas and it comes out in a variety of different ways. And so tonight, when we talk about partnering with digital curriculum, you'll see that it can be used in all of these different types of classrooms. So tonight, we're really going to talk about partnering with digital curriculum. So some of you, I know you put traditional up there, but we're really going to try to push you into that blended where you're leaning on or partnering with digital curriculum. So let's talk about engaging the learner. When I talk about DOKs, you're going to hear me talk about DOKs a lot. And I know a lot of you are familiar with Bloom's taxonomy. So we'll compare that to Bloom's taxonomy. Tonight, you're going to hear me talk about digital curriculum being at DOK level 1 and 2. So if you look at Bloom's taxonomy, 1 and 2 is that low remembering and understanding. It's a way for us to explain ideas, do some basic concepts. And there's goes Nathan, Loomis before Bloom's. I love it. So we're going to talk about that, partnering with digital curriculum, allowing it to cover DOK levels 1 and 2. But what we want to do is push our kids to DOK levels 3 and 4, because as you know, our standards are more like analyze, evaluate, create, synthesize, apply. So we have to push our kids to the higher level. So we don't have enough time in our classroom to do all of it. That's why partnering with digital curriculum becomes really important. So tonight, when I talk about DOK or Webb's depth of knowledge, that's what I'm talking about. So you might have the Bloom's taxonomy in your mind. I'm just trying to give you a little reminder of what it looks like. So let's talk about a typical classroom. Some of you said that you were in traditional classrooms. So what does that look like? That, as a teacher, oftentimes it's a lot of direct or teacher-led instruction, stuck a lot in your DOK 1 and 2, because you've got to get the kids the foundations. And every day you're sitting there, you're trying to get them there, trying to get them there, trying to get them there, and you are just tired and frustrated. And then the kids come in and they're like, oh, we're doing DOK level 1 and 2 stuff again. Oh, so that's a lot of skills and little concept development. We're doing a lot of practice, and they're bored and they're frustrated. I know you all have kids that are absent. So they miss instruction because you delivered it on Tuesday, but they were absent on Tuesday. Heck, they didn't probably come back to school till Thursday. So now they have this gap. And so they're totally frustrated. So when you look at these 3 individuals in the classroom, right, our teacher, our students, and our absent students, there's a lowest common denominator. Or maybe it's not lowest. It's low, all right, but it's a common denominator. Does anybody know what it is? It's frustration, right? You see the frustration. The teacher's working as hard as they can to get to just the basics. And the students are working as hard as they can, and they're not getting that opportunity to really analyze, synthesize, go to the top of Bloom's taxonomy. And our poor absent kids, they keep missing so much instruction, they have no way of even being on grade level. So let's add one thing, just one thing to this equation, and we're going to change our traditional or typical classroom. Students won't remember so much what you taught them: math, social studies, science, English, art, any of that. What they will remember is how you made them feel. And if they were frustrated and you were frustrated the whole time, they'll remember that. So what we want to do is we want to change that just a little by adding one ingredient. And I'll bet you can already guess what that one ingredient is. It's digital content. So when we add digital content, we can create an actively engaging classroom. By adding digital content, that can give students skills, it can introduce basic concepts. It can give students opportunities to practice those skills, and it creates a personalized environment for Johnny and Betty and Jose. They all have their own environment where they can practice and learn DOK level 1 and 2. By adding that one ingredient, it's going to change everything in this classroom. So as a teacher now, you don't have to deliver all of DOK level 1 and 2. You can release some of that learning by partnering with the technology. And so you can set up station rotations or playlists that are connected to your digital content. And then you can start thinking about some actively engaging activities that you can push your kids to DOK level 3 and 4, where you and I know that's where our standards are at. So we change the way we're instructing our classroom. Instead of all of that direct instruction and lecturing, we now become the guides on the side. We now become the person who's going to hear me talk about this a lot tonight, teaching by walking around, because I'm releasing the content to the digital partner, but I'm also going to release engaging activities so my kids can do peer-to-peer activity stuff, so it changes what they're doing. I might bring in some of the things that you guys just talked about empowerment. I might bring in some higher order thinking skills, bring in the 4 C's: communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity, right? I might bring in some of those 16 habits like perseverance and grit and the learning pit from last time we were together, and help our kids understand that they can take what they're learning to a higher level in projects and inquiry, to those higher actively engaging environments. And what does that do to our students that are absent? Because if you remember, they had gaps. They were frustrated as all get out. Well, what we're going to do, because we have the digital content, they now have the opportunity to have continuous learning. Because we partnered with the digital content, the tech will just pick up exactly where they left off. And when we put our kids in groups and they're working with their peers in higher order practice as well as projects, their peers will help pull them up. And because we're releasing not only to the digital content, partnering with it, but releasing to our students to do peer-to-peer fun activities, we have opportunities to do teaching by walking around, and we could do one-on-one coaching, and we can help push that kid and get them caught up. So notice this one ingredient: digital content, digital curriculum, that we've added to the environment here, creating a traditional classroom into a blended classroom. And what does it do? Everybody's now engaged. Everybody's active. Everybody has a role, and nobody's tired and bored. So that one ingredient, digital content, can make a huge, huge difference. Now, earlier, I told you guys I wrote a book and it's called The CIA of Blended, and we're going to talk about that tonight. So when I talk about CIA, you probably have heard curriculum instruction and assessment before, but you maybe have not heard of it in an approach for blended, just like we were just talking about, bringing in digital content, partnering with it so that it can help our students. You're also going to hear me make it really easy. I taught high school math for 10 years, so I like to make this easy: 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. So when you hear about that 1/3 balance, that's what I'm talking about: digital curriculum, guided instruction, authentic assessment. But before we get there, let's talk about what's the definition of blended personalized learning. And you'll notice here, I am not just saying blended learning, because one of the things that's so key to bringing in digital curriculum is it personalizes the learning space. Every student has their own little learning environment. They're going to get kudos from the software that's going to Gigi, the little penguin's going to be excited for them. Sometimes you see stars and certificates handed out inside their personalized experience, right? So that's why I like to call it blended personalized learning. We want to make sure that we're going to take the wisdom of the teachers, because you guys are super, super smart. Some of you even have master's degrees. Some of you have been doing this for years on end. I get some of you are new, but you still know your standards much better than that digital curriculum. But what we're going to do is we're going to add in the adaptability of the technology, which is really nice because we have kids with gaps, and the adaptability of the technology allows for those gaps. It can spiral down and not take your time from having to do it. Or because you're partnering with your digital curriculum, you now have time to be able to create that one-on-one situation and teaching by walking around to help fill those gaps. And what we're really focusing in on is trying to create this personalized learning space, going back and empowering, going back to our portrait of a Nevada learner, having them reflect on their learning, having them understand where they are in their intellectual growth and power, and having them think about, what can I do? What do I need to do to be able to be at a better place? And that's where the empowering comes in. Now you'll notice there's a little red heart there, because no way that AI or adaptability of digital content that's going to replace a teacher, because the relationship that you have with your kids are so strong, it should never go away, and neither should you. So that's why it's so important to have the wisdom of the teachers, the adaptability of the technology to create these personalized learning space for students. Now, you heard me say 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 a moment ago, and it's probably pretty easy to figure out what those thirds are, because there are 3 different icons right here: teachers, tech, and students. And that's where our 1/3s come in. 1/3 of the time, allowing the digital curriculum do what it does best: deliver DOK level 1 and 2, frees you up to do some teaching by walking around. 1/3 of the time, we want to have our students working peer-to-peer, doing small group activities, doing projects together, doing inquiry-based stuff, right? We want them working together so that they're thinking through their empowerment of their learning. And then 1/3 of the time where you're guiding the lesson. Yeah, you wrote a lesson plan that says we're going to do station rotation today, or we're going to do a playlist today, or we're going to have different breakouts, whatever the case may be, but you still have 2/3 of the time. Look at that. Digital curriculum, student authentic assessment is 2/3 of the time. So 2/3 of the classroom time, you are teaching by walking around, where you get to strengthen those relationships with your students. So again, the CIA of blended learning is balancing a classroom, not every day, but in a unit of study, 1/3 of the time, digital curriculum, 1/3 of the time, guided instruction, and 1/3 of the time, authentic assessment. And you can see the triple Venn diagram there, not only on the slide, but you see it right there behind me, because I got to tell you guys, this is my passion. I truly believe that if we can balance this 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, empowering our students, releasing to the digital curriculum, giving ourselves 2/3 of the time the opportunity to do teaching by walking around, our frustration level is going to go down, our energy is going to go up, and so are our students' energies. They're going to go up as well. So tonight, when we talk about the triple Venn diagram, I'm only going to be talking about that one corner of digital curriculum. Now, remember, digital curriculum can only deliver DOK level 1 and 2. There are some curriculums out there that offer DOK level 3 and 4 activities, but it takes a teacher to pull those out. So tonight, remember, when we're talking about partnering with digital curriculum, we're really thinking about taking the data from our digital curriculum and pushing it and helping us get to the other 2. But let's talk about digital curriculum. So when we talk about unit planning, and I do mean unit, not a lesson should be 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. When I think of the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, I want to think of a unit of study. Don't think that you have to do it every day in every lesson. Think about, in the balance of one unit of study, have I taken 1/3 of the time and released it to my digital partners? Have I taken 1/3 of the time and released it to my students? So you, again, the wisdom of teachers, you know your standards, you know what the depth of knowledge are, you know where kids have misconceptions, you know when kids need scaffolds, you know how to stretch the learning. Again, your wisdom is where you start. And you say, look, oh, I can release that to digital content. Oh, I'm going to create an activity where the kids are going to do quiz, trade, all these types of things that you think in your pedagogy, how you can empower your students. So again, it's that release to the students and the release to the digital curriculum. And you can see from the DOK 1 and 2 and the digital partner, pushing yourself to DOK 1 to 3, the way we get our kids to 4, the top of that pyramid is designing projects, inquiry-based, so that you can give them an opportunity to do some authentic assessment. So you can see how that comes across the bottom there. So let's talk a little bit about digital curriculum. The best thing about this, it's a personalized learning space. Every student logs in under their name. right? And so you can have some data, they can go someplace. They don't have to wait for somebody to catch up. Even if I release a video, if I use crash course video and I want everybody to watch the crash course video, I can either project it, but you know what? Then it's at my pace when I turn it on and when I turn it off, or I can put it in a playlist and I can tell the students, when you're ready, you can watch this video. And they can rewind it, they can come back to it, they can watch a little bit of it and take some notes. So notice again the difference between personalized space versus projecting a larger one. Now, most of the time it's in an engaging software. You heard me talk about Gigi the Penguin, right, in the math program. You heard me talk about all the celebrations that go on in different iReady. I've seen they have like things that pop up, right? It's typically aligned to standards. Yes, it may miss some standards, but that's okay. You, because of your wisdom, you'll identify what standards it's missing and be able to identify those. And the cool thing is you're getting individualized data on every student. And as we mentioned earlier, if a student's absent, they can pick up right where they left off. Now, it's not perfect. When you hear me talk about partnering, you have partners in your life. Some of them are called spouses and some of them are called kids. And you've probably shared space with roommates in college. Partnering with somebody is not always easy. So I'm going to use an analogy like your dishwasher. So you and your husband or you and your spouse are in your home and, or your kids even, they put the dishes in the dishwasher differently than you do. Guess what? Your digital curriculum is sometimes going to teach something differently than you do. But that's okay, because if you think back to the dishwasher analogy, even though your partners at home are not doing it exactly the way you want them to, the dishes still come out clean most of the time. And that's what's going to happen with your students. Most of the students will get DOK level 1 and 2, even though it wasn't presented the way you wanted to. Now, if you want to come in the back end and you got the data that says, you know what, little Steven, he doesn't understand it, and I can do some intervention with little Steven, that's okay. We do the same thing with dishes. Sometimes something doesn't come clean. We do a little intervention. So think about your digital curriculum is not always perfect, DOK level 1 and 2, but guess what? If I can release even 30% of instruction to digital curriculum, it's got to be better than me doing it all myself. So let's talk about the difference between digital curriculum, or what I like to call content, versus digital tools. Now, curriculum comes full. It comes full of math, science, social studies, English. It's usually curriculum that's packaged into learning objects or maybe a lesson or even a full course, but it's full. It's full of content, where digital tools typically come empty. Think about a Word doc or a Google Slides. When you open it up and you say new, it's empty. Right? Because really, when you think about it, it's there for us to use and create and organize and manage classes, right? It's typically empty. Now, I get that in some places like Nearpod and some of the others, they have repositories of teachers that have created stuff that we can borrow. So it was originally empty. Somebody filled it up for us and we were able to use it. Now, when you partner, I always say, think about your cognitive load. You don't want to have so many things going on that you're like, oh, I can't think which one to use. So I always say, have 1 to 3 digital partners. In elementary, it's so good to have a digital partner like Discovery Ed, right? Discovery Ed has curriculum in multiple subject areas, and I can dip into Discovery Ed for social studies. I can dip into it for science. I can dip into it for math. I can dip into it for literacy. That's a great digital partner because I can dip into that in multiple areas. Now, I was a high school math teacher. There were 2 that I loved to dip into. I loved Prodigy Math because it was a great way for kids to get some content, and I also loved Alex Math because it had that adaptability. So I had 2 digital partners. If I had to push, and I didn't really need to, right? Because I knew that between those 2 things, they would cover DOK level 1 and 2. I could have added a third. But when it comes to digital tools, I like to have a little more digital tools, because you think about it, I want to have a digital tool that I can use for videos so that I can do the pause and have them come in and do the question. So you've probably seen a video tool that will do that. Also, I like a tool for assessment or for a quick, exit ticket. So I can say digital tools anywhere from 3 to 5, but don't get app happy. Don't have 6, 8, 10, 12. Think about the major areas that you want to have it in assessment, in slides, in Google and Microsoft, they have a whole suite. So that really alone already gets us to about 3 to 5 different tools with forms and exams and stuff. So it's awesome. So think through when you're partnering with digital content, find 1, 2, 3 at most that you want to partner with. Now, you're wondering, Kim, where do I get all of these? Well, these are just by going onto my bookmarks and pulling some things out. Now, some of these digital contents you've probably seen. Some you may not have seen before. Common Sense at the top there under digital content is a great place to go in and see what other people are thinking about digital content and tools. You probably have heard of free reworks. Absolutely love it. Or iCivics or IXL. There's some great things up there that you can deliver math, science, social studies, English. Remember, digital content comes full, but digital tools come empty. Edpuzzle, that was the tool that I love so much for video. Kahoots, there's a new one. It's called Booker. I like it so much better than Kahoots because that one is very independent. So when you think through what that one, I think it's called Booker. You got to find those out. So think through what's a digital content. Yes, and Gimmet. Yeah, there's some good ones there out there. Matter of fact, guess what? When you're thinking about borrowing or partnering with digital curriculum, think about first off, has somebody already bought something for me? Has somebody already bought something for me? You can go to your principal at school and say, hey, do we have already something that's already bought? Did we already buy already? Do we have Alex Math? The State Department of Education has bought Discovery Ed for the entire state. So that's one that's been bought. Now, what tends to happen with bought stuff, higher quality, point blank, typically much more interactive and engaging, always aligned to standards, right? Because they're spending money for it. So think about what can I partner with that's already bought. Now you can borrow things like open educational resources, Khan Academy. You don't have to pay for it. It's an open ed resource. CK12, again, you don't have to buy it, but it's an open resource. Sometimes the quality varies and sometimes the engagement varies, but again, it's free. And it might take you a while to curate it and find it. Again, that's why we want to stay with 1 to 3 under digital curriculum and 3 to 5 under your tools. Now, those of you that were with us in 2020 and 2021 when we had to do remote learning, you know how hard it was to create your own digital content. Some of you were recording videos. Some of you were trying to make interactive Canvas pages, right? It is time consuming. So when you're thinking about partnering with digital curriculum, think about where can I get curriculum that's either bought, borrow, or am I going to build it? So those are some things when you think about digital curriculum, where can I get it? And also you want to think about what do you want to use it for? Am I using it for skills and practice? I don't need any instruction. IXL is great for that, right? And do I want something that's adaptive like iReady or Alex Math? Do I need a full course like Edmentum or maybe the Apex courses? Or do I need just something that's going to be quick and easy to get a quick assessment out of my students? So when you're thinking about partnering with digital curriculum, think about not only where can I get it, but how do I want to use it? Now, I'm going to give you guys, and I'm going to throw this up into chat. This is my list of digital resources. I broke them down into elementary, middle school, and high school. And guys, some of these are bought, some of them are borrowed, right? So think through what kind of tools do I want to use? Some of them you probably already use. Some of them you've never even thought about. Like you heard me say just a moment about ReadWorks and it being free. And if you didn't know that, dude, you need to check into ReadWorks because it's the best one. I think I love absolutely going out there. If you're a social studies teacher, iCivics or Crash Course, again, free. Totally fun. So you'll notice that these are broken down into content areas. So not only am I giving it to you right now, guys, I don't want you to feel like, yeah, oh my God, I'm going to forget. It's also in the Canvas course. So once you go into the Canvas course, you'll see this as well. So now's a great time for us to think about what you are currently using in your classroom and share that with other people. Welcome back, guys. Hopefully you had some great conversation and you learned some new tools that either you shared or that others have shared with you. I appreciate it. So let's talk about how to make this work. Well, first off, I'm going to say keep things simple. right? Determine what your learning priorities are and release some of the learning to your digital partner. So find a digital partner that you like. I'm a big fan of saying if it's a partner, just like I dated a lot of people before I found my spouse, I may date or check out a lot of different digital curriculums and say, well, did this one work for me? And if it worked, then I keep it. And if it doesn't, then it's out the door and we'll find something new. Ask around. Discovery Ed's a great one that's new and free. That you have access to multiple subjects. Ideal for elementary, but there's other great ones out there as well. And then add in some peer-to-peer hands-on engagement. I mean, think of Quiz Trade or Four Corners or Socratic seminars. Think about what those hands-on and those peer-to-peer engagements will do to be able to add that in. So remember, one third, one third, one third, and then keep that balance of one third, one third, one third. It doesn't have to be a station rotation like we see here, right? But it's a great way to think about how can I use digital curriculum? When do I need to take the lead? And when can I release to my students and create a playlist or something different where my kids are getting those 4 C's, they're getting those higher order thinking skills, getting into projects and real world applications. So keep things simple as you're pulling out and you're partnering with digital curriculum. Think of one third, right? The key to this one third stuff is 2/3 of the time, you're teaching by walking around. Kids are working on digital curriculum, kids are working in their projects and peer-to-peer. So think about how you can do that so you can walk around. You can build those stronger relationships. You can ask those higher order thinking skills or think about where kids need interventions and how you can get that one-on-one coaching time with them. So when you're planning a unit of study, it doesn't always have to be a lesson because one third, one third, one third doesn't always work in a single lesson. But when you're thinking of a unit of a study, think of digital curriculum, guided instruction, authentic assessment. So I'm going to go to my digital curriculum and say, what's inside here? What topics can I borrow, beg, and steal from? What vocabulary is in there? What assessments? What ideas? The cool thing is I'm going to get lots of data that's going to help drive my guided instruction because I'm going to know that out of my 30 kids, maybe 7 need a small group, or out of my 30 kids, 28 get it. So we can move forward and I can do some single one-on-one coaching. So that's the nice thing is letting that data help me determine where to take my students because I know the power standards. I know what depth they need to be. Most of them are sitting at 3 and 4. I know where kids typically have misconceptions and where I can scaffold and where I can stretch and push those kids to higher order thinking skills into inquiry-based projects and the 4 C's. And that's what we want to do is build into that lesson some of those 4 C's. So build in those opportunities to communicate, collaborate, do something, critical thinking and creativity. That's where the projects actually come in as well. So think about how you can balance those lessons. And guys, if you put this into your classroom, you get the opportunity to earn 5 more additional hours for classroom implementation. So if you really want to do that Canvas exploration or that extended workshop, think about the possible digital curriculums. It could be something you're already using. Some of you probably have already done some of this in the past. Now's an opportunity to try something new or just fine tune something that you've done before. Reflect on this new pedagogy, this one third, one third, one third, and how to bring in student empowerment from the Portrait of a Nevada Learner into your classroom. Design a lesson, implement it into your classroom, have your students give you some feedback and what they thought about it, and you reflecting on how well the lesson went, and then you can get those 5 additional hours in the extended workshop.